What up friends, Liron here. I've got tons of new stuff for you, but for now what we're gonna do in this video is review the Arches rough paper, the orange one, my favorite watercolor paper so far. And funny enough, I ordered some other papers from eBay I think, and I got them, and I was sure they're gonna be bigger, and this is what I've got. It's tiny, look at it in comparison. The Strathmore. I heard many good things about it, and I guess I will review it in the future. But for now, this paper is what I used a lot, so I feel like I can give more information about it. And because it's brand new, we're gonna open it and look at it up close. So let's get started. So let's first review the information written on this paper. So this is the Arches watercolor paper. I'm not that familiar like with the brand itself, but from what I hear they've been making watercolor paper for like a few hundred years, so that's a nice fact to know. We have the rough texture here, the orange one. Each color basically represents a different level of or a different type of paper. I love the orange one, even though it has some disadvantages and advantages as we will see in a moment. It's 18 on 26 centimeters, which is 7 on 10 inches, and it's pure cotton, which is good. This one has 20 sheets in it. Let's just open it up and you can see my reflection, which is nice. Here I am. Let's open it up and see what we got here. I'll try doing it like without harming anything. Rip it open here. Almost cut myself live, which could be bad. And this is what we got. It's very nice. You can see here, just I like the way it looks. I don't know, it feels all fancy. And I open it up, and there's this. This is the first page in most like Arches blocks that I saw, and it's actually good because it guides you on how to use it. So if you look up here, you will see they're all stuck together. Can you see it? This is glue, and in order to get to the next page, you actually have to peel it off. So this is what I'm gonna do just now. And you need to use something sharp and be very careful. And you see I got through, and then all I need to do is sort of cut through it all the way around. Voila! And we can see the paper here. Let me zoom in just so you can see the texture a little better. Okay, so now we're looking up close and you can see the texture is quite rough. Let me try and see from side view. Maybe you can also see this. Yes, so the texture is very rough. I like it, but it's good for some things and less suitable for others. If you like to get a lot of sharp edges, then this can be quite a challenge sometimes. Let me show you just something I did recently, even from yesterday, I think. Yes, okay. Yes, we are focused finally. I had to struggle a bit to get it focused. Okay, so you can see here, if you follow along the lines, the texture really gets into the, you know, the lines, and I like it. I like that effect. It gives it this sort of, I don't even know how to define that look. Man, I have no words. But it gives it a very cool look, in my opinion. It gives it character, you know. What I love about this paper, aside from the rough texture, is how thick it is and how it allows to absorb like tons of layers of paint, which is very nice. Let's look at another one, like my attempt at a galaxy painting. I didn't have an opaque enough color, so it's really an attempt, not a successful one really. But you can see all the colors starting from very bright and going all the way to the very dark. Now you probably can imagine that this has at least like 4 or 5 layers of watercolor, because you start with the yellow and then I added all the red here and all the blues, and man, this is tons of layers, and it just soaks it up and really well, and it doesn't get too too warped or crumpled because it's glued. Once again, it's glued all around. Now, it's not foolproof, like just because it's glued, but it really helps to absorb some of the color in a way that doesn't completely warps the paper, which is nice. One more thing I wanted to say. Yes, okay, because the paper is so nice and thick, it takes some time for the color to be absorbed. So what you can do is basically lay down a layer, wait for a while, you know, I'll do some other things and come back and it's still wet. It's just amazing. And for me, coming from using a really lame paper in comparison, this was like a really nice thing to go into. Let's do one more thing. I want to demonstrate just how it absorbs the color, so I'll do that in just a second. But before, let's compare. This is a really old painting actually that I did, but if we zoom in, you can see how the texture is so smooth on this paper, which by the way, I have no idea what brand it is, I'm sorry. Okay, we're focused. So I don't know what brand it is again, but you can see the difference in the texture of the paper. Like this, it really takes over the painting. And this one, not so much. The lines are pretty smooth actually. You can see this here, like. So, oops, dropping some stuff here. So that's the main difference, I'd say, between the smoother paper and the rough paper. Now let's go on and do a little demonstration so you can see how it soaks up the color. Okay, this time I want you to see everything. So you can see where I dip my brush into the water. You can see some of the paint, the watercolors, and the paper itself. So let's get started just as a quick demo to show you how it soaks up the color. I'm really no expert in watercolors yet. Like I'm getting to a nice, good level, but it takes tons of time, and I need to look back like 3 months just to see the progress I made. So it's a really cool medium, really fun, but it takes some time. Okay, so I'll just start, and you can see it's really nice. Let me just zoom in, you know what? Okay, so I'm painting, and it soaks up the color nice. But what you will notice is here around the edges, you see this roughy texture. This is exactly how it works, how the texture affects the lines that you do. Sometimes you'll find that it's easier to go with straight lines like this. And even in these types of lines, you see how you kind of get this rough texture. I like to do lines like this, and I find that really the more I go down with the angle of the brush, the more the texture shows, it makes sense. This is actually a technique for getting the texture of the paper to show. So let me demonstrate this specifically. If I go ahead with the tip of the brush here, you can see it gets a fairly smooth line. But the more I lower the angle, let's say instead of like this, I go like this. Look at that. Look at that texture. See that? You can use this to create actually an effect like leafy effect or stuff like that. I use it a lot. If you want to draw a tree, for example, maybe let's go ahead and actually take a color that fits a tree more. Let's add in some green here. Okay, so I got some sap green here and a wider brush, which I prefer. And now if I want to get just the tree texture, I can sort of play with the brush around at a slight angle. Let me zoom in a bit. And I'm just playing around with it. And because of the texture of the paper here, you get this kind of a tree-like look. Now I can go back, maybe add some darker colors inside, mix some burnt sienna here. And because this paper is so nice, you can just go ahead and it soaks right into the already existing color. Now, good watercolor paper should be able to do that. And this is a good paper. Sort of dab that in. And even the edges kind of can mix with the Like if I continue an edge here, it mixes in together. Now the thing is, I really used a bit of a dry paint earlier, so let's try just to apply a more wet paint here. Like this. This is really wet. And I'll just dab a bit some of the paint. I'll soak it up with the brush. Like this. And then what I want to do is try putting in some other colors into this one. Dabbing, dabbing. And it accepts it, you know. It doesn't tell it, go, get out of here, blue. It accepts it, the green. So that's a nice thing with this paper, which I really, really like. Let's go ahead and try something else here. Let's try using a flat brush. And just to see how it soaks up. This is a really cheap brush. That I got from I think also eBay. I have a few more expensive brushes. Like this one's quite nice. The one I've been using so far, the silver black velvet, and this one I also like. It's a Princeton. I love it. This one is cheaper just because I wanted to try a flat brush and not to commit to something too fancy here. So let me grab some of the Viridian green from earlier, and I find that with this brush. Now it works nice, but sometimes I can feel like with flat brushes the paper doesn't, if they're really flat, the paper doesn't like them sometimes, and you get this, you see like what I just got here. You see this kind of not pouring in the color, so you kind of need to, the color doesn't leave the brush properly. So you sometimes kind of need to either raise the angle and go ahead like this, see? Let's make it a bit more wet, like this. And it accepts it, but when you press too hard, it kind of doesn't give you an even spread of the color. So this is something to keep in mind. And one more thing I want to try is using a very thin brush. It's the same silver velvet as the one I used a moment ago, just a thinner one. And let me take some of the sap green here. Now the nice thing with a thin brush is that it can actually reach the inside into the rough texture of the paper. Okay, so this is something nice. You can see it like this. But also, if you lower the angle, like we did earlier, you will get, sometimes you see this rough texture here, especially if you go like this. Beautiful, huh? It looks like a big fat mess, but yeah, let's wrap this up. Friends, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you to understand whether or not you want to give this paper a shot. And if you did, let me know how it goes. Let me know what you think. And also, please leave a comment below the video and tell me, do you prefer the rough texture like me, or do you prefer the smoother one? I'm very curious to know. And finally, I want to thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you liked it. There's gonna be tons of new stuff coming up. I promise you have no idea. And until the next one, take care, and I'll see you soon.